Joining us now in studio is Alan Biehl, the candidate for Montville Township Trustee. Alan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's great to have you. First, just take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I was born in Cleveland, actually. I grew up in Parma Heights, where my mom still lives. Didn't really even think about ever moving out to Medina until I had an opportunity to work at the ODOT district down in Ashland, because my background is I'm a registered professional engineer. So I got my degree in civil engineering at Ohio State. And when the opportunity came to work down in Ashland, of course, driving from Cuyahoga County all the way to Ashland was not going to happen. So when the wife and I were talking about moving, we didn't want to move to Ashland. That was just too far away for family. So we Medina's about the halfway spot. Let's look around in Medina. And 20-some years ago, that's what we were doing. We were driving all over the city. We were looking at the north side of Medina, the south side of Medina, Lafayette Township, Montville Township, Medina. I mean, we were looking everywhere. And it just so happens that there was a Lexington Ridge subdivision, which was under construction at the time, was the place that we just fell in love with when they were building. And so, 23 years ago is when we had our home built and we moved out here. Been here ever since. Worked on and off at ODOT over the years, also worked in the private sector, so I have that private sector experience, not just the public sector experience. It was very rewarding because, quite honestly, that is the opportunity that gave me the ability to meet a lot of the local elected officials who, in a lot of cases to this day, are still elected officials in Medina County, where I got to work with them on projects that ODOT was administering in and around the Medina area. And so that's kind of how I got here. How I got involved with the township was after a few years after moving out here, and one of the projects we were working on was a project in Montville Township. It was improving the intersection actually at State Route 57 and State Route 162, which seems like generations ago already. Got to meet the trustees. At that time it was Ron Bischoff, Jeff Brandon. I don't think Sally wasn't a trustee yet, but in working with them and kind of explaining them the project and just getting to know them, making sure they understood what was going on. The one afternoon when I was talking to Jeff Brandon, he's like, "Hey, we have a vacancy on our Board of Zoning Appeals. Would you be interested since you live here?" And I've always been a very civic-minded person. I think the reason why straight out of college I was attracted to work for ODOT or the government was because I felt like I could have more influence and more opportunities to improve people's lives, working in the public sector. But that's what I did. It's like Jeff offered to be an alternate on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I accepted that offer. And that was in 2006. Basically was on the Board of Zoning Appeals up until 2 years ago. Chaired it for about 12 years with the township. With the unfortunate passing of Ron Bischoff, who was a class act guy. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to get to know him or work with him, but 2 years into his term, he had passed away. And by law, the trustees had 30 days to appoint a replacement for Ron, and they approached me about the consideration if I were to interview and get selected to be a township trustee. And again, that civic mindedness that goes on in my head. I was like, and after a long talk with the wife, because she's like, "Don't you have enough to do?" But anyway, she agreed. She said, "No, if this is what your heart wants, it says you know what to do, then go ahead and do it." And so I interviewed, and I was fortunate enough to get the appointment 2 years ago to finish out his term. And so here we are 2 years later, his term is ending, and so I am running now I can't say re-elected because I never got elected, I got appointed, but I'd like to stay on as the township trustee to continue supporting and helping the township.
Sure, and again, I thank you for putting your hat in the political arena. That's always a tough venture for people to take.
Especially for an engineer. Yeah. Most people, when they think of engineers, they're like, introverts, pocket protector, all that kind of thing. I am the anomaly. I admit it. Very, very outgoing. But you know what? I guess if I'm going to have a weakness, that's a good weakness to have.
And like you said, being appointed and now facing your first chance of being elected, what made you decide to go for, I guess, for lack of a better term, I'll say a second term, even though you're filling in that term?
You know, we have a good makeup with our township trustees right now, and actually at the interview I made this comment. I said I wouldn't consider this if I didn't think Montville Township was a well-run, professionally run organization. You know, you know, even when I was in a leadership role at ODOT and working under Jerry Ray, the director of ODOT at the time, you know, it was always about professionalism, excellence in government. I mean, ODOT actually had these coffee mugs that said excellence in government, right? And so I just liked the way the township was running. And our department heads, our police chief, our zoning inspector, our service director, they're all top-notch people. And I just felt like, yeah, I want to be part of this. But then I think the other thing I bring to the table when you look at all of our various backgrounds, whether you're talking about Sally or Jeff or whatever, we all have varied backgrounds, and I think that's important. I think it's very helpful for township government because it is a limited form of government, and you don't have staff experts. You know, we don't have a city engineer. We don't have, you know, a law director. We do have legal counsel, but you know, you don't have people on payroll that you can just go to. So we have to be it, you know. And so with Jeff having a real estate background, you know, anything related to that, he can bring that to the table. Sally is very much into our park systems and the development of our parks, and that's a wonderful attribute with the parks that we have, and we have great parks in Montville Township. And then, of course, obviously, my background being transportation, specifically, you know, highways and everything. You know, as you would imagine, when I got the appointment, I was assigned over the roads and cemeteries. Not sure about the cemetery part, but roads made sense. But anyway, all that being said, what I could bring to the table and what I've already bring to the table is, it's like I tell a lot of people, government is complex. And it's not complex just within the framework of a township government. It's complex in the interaction and the interrelationship of government, whether it's the township, the county, the state, the federal. And what you find over the years of experience having worked in government is there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of cooperation, a lot of leaning on each other to get something to happen, to make something happen. And again, going back to the relationships that I built, you know, even when I was at ODOT, building the relationships with Mayor Hanwell, who of course now he's stepping down, but you know, even with that, you know, I've worked with, you know, John Coyne, I've worked with, you know, Jim Shields from when I was at ODOT, so you know, I've already got a relationship with whichever mayor wins, right? And you know, at the state level, very obvious, I got the relationships there. The one thing in township, you know, with townships is, you know, we only maintain a limited amount of roadway. You know, the state highway systems are still maintained by ODOT. County roads are still maintained by the county. But I have, again, those relationships where when an issue comes up, I can make a phone call and say, hey, we got this problem, we have somebody that, you know, is complaining about this, and, you know, I was wondering if, you know, something we could take a look at. And it's not easy just to pick up the phone and call somebody you don't know, right? I mean, and so we've already had certain opportunities to where I was able to help a constituent, not because it was something I could do, but I knew who you needed to go to help solve the problem. So that's where, like I said, that interest of community, civic duty, you know, helping quality of life, you know, all those things are important to me. You know, I mentioned earlier Lexington Ridge is, you know, our subdivision we live in. And again, my wife, God bless her, she's a saint that she puts up with all this. But anyway, when the developer turned the subdivision over to the homeowners to run, I threw my hat in for that. For being, to run for HOA on the board, and I ended up winning. We won 5 on the board that won, and so. You know, we had our work cut out for us even in that realm of taking over an HOA that the homeowners never did before. You know, I learned a lot about my neighbors. I learned a lot about the issues within the organization, within the HOA. Learned that we were financially not in good sound setting when we took it over, and so, you know, all the things that we did as an HOA board even were to improve the quality of life of the residents that lived in our HOA. So you can kind of see, the pattern, right? Maybe someday I'll say I'm done, but right now I don't feel like I'm done yet. I still feel like I have more to offer.
Sure. Now, I know there's state statute and everything like that defines the role of a township trustee, but how would you define the role of a trustee?
Basically, I think any elected official, the role is to serve your constituents. And again, in a lot of cases, if there is an issue that comes up, they don't know who to turn to. And so, I mean, everything from, there's a pothole on my street or whatever, or there's, kids, riding motorcycles in the park that are not supposed to be there doing that. I mean, just little things like that. Again, it's there to help people, with things that happen in the community that they themselves don't know how to address or that they can't address. So I kind of feel like we're a bit ambassadors, in the sense of, we have a community now approaching 14,000 residents. I mean, we're after the three cities in Medina County, Wadsworth, Medina, and Brunswick, we're fourth in population. And so there's a lot of constituents, a lot of them not native. I mean, they moved in like I did from elsewhere, so they're not familiar with, the area. They're not familiar with, the township. And so a lot of times, you get that phone call where they're just looking for an answer of who do I go to, or how do I get this issue resolved. And so I feel like that is a large part of our role. The other part of our role is, fiscal responsibility. We have a budget, like any governmental agency. We have a budget. With inflation and everything, we've had to try harder probably than ever to figure out how to stretch our budget. And again, one of the things I bring to the table with my transportation background is everything I learned when I was at ODOT when it comes to pavement management, things like that. Our roads are one of our biggest, if not our biggest, asset in the township. And so again, one of the things I feel like if you have a certain expertise that you can bring to the table, that can be used on the benefit of the township or for the benefit of the township and the residents of the township or the businesses of the township, we should be taking advantage of that and utilizing that. And so, so I mean, again, I feel like the township, our responsibility is to serve our constituents. Manage our budget well, whether it's budget for roads or for police, fire, what have you. To serve our residents and our businesses as best we can.
Mm-hmm. Again, speaking with Alan Biehl, candidate for Montville Township Trustee. What are your thoughts in regards to economic development and the balance between economic development and residential within the township?
It is probably one of our most challenging, I don't want to call it an issue. It's not an issue, but it is a reality. With any area of growth and of almost, one could argue, exponential growth, when you look at 2010 when our census was putting us just a shade under 5,000 residents, and then 10 years later in the 2020 census we're a shade under 14,000 residents. I mean, that's pretty significant growth. The challenges, there's a lot of challenges. One is balancing, the needs of the residents along with the needs of the business community. I am a firm, believer in property rights as it relates to if the property you own is zoned a certain way and you have the legal right to develop your property the way, the zoning allows for you to develop it. We have to be cooperative and work with those businesses to make sure that they can maximize their benefit of their property, but we have to do it in a thoughtful way. I think we're doing that very well right now, especially when you look along Route 3. That's our latest area now of growth. Some of the things we've done as a township, even in the last couple of years, was we've changed some of our zoning to allow for more thoughtful growth and really growth that people are looking for now. We've gotten away from the big box stores, right? And so our zoning has to be adaptive to those changes. And so I think what we're trying to do as our township is starting to get to that point of maturity is to do it in a smart way. Our biggest complaint, as you would expect, is traffic. When I talk to the residents, and I'm like, well, do you have any issues with the township? And they're like, no, nothing I can think of. But boy, the traffic, that kind of thing. That is again something that I try to work with both the township, my fellow trustees, along with the ODOT or the county engineer, to look for those opportunities to best manage that growth. But at the same time, still allow the development to occur. You can't stop it. I mean, I know a lot of people would like to say, stop it. It's like, can you guys just stop this growth? Well, no, we can't legally. I mean, there's property rights is very important in our country, right? It's one of our foundations. And so, the best we can do is just make sure that we're properly managing it. I think the other thing too, again, is, and again, having the background that I have, a lot of developers, when they do come in and they're looking at a development, especially if it ties into another governmental agency, not understanding like who do I need to talk to again. If it's ODOT, because you have to do a traffic impact study. Just connecting those. It's really about connecting the people to the right people, and so making sure that we're doing everything we can to help them facilitate what they want to get accomplished without having to do a lot of stepping back and reworking and doing over. So again, I think we're doing a pretty good job with it. It's not going to go away. I mean, it is, like I said, it's going to continue. We have a lot going on right now, like I said, along the Route 3 corridor, but I think we're doing it in a smart way, the way we're allowing that area to develop.
Now, a lot of times the townships require collaborations and efforts. One of those is the city partnership in regards to fire services right now. What are your thoughts on that? And then what are your thoughts about other collaborations, whether it be the city, township, or county?
I've always been, again, having worked for a large part of my career in the public sector, I've always been a real proponent of collaboration. Again, to me, it's more tied to fiscal responsibility. If there's a way we can do something collaboratively that costs the taxpayers less money, we should seriously be thinking of doing it. I think our setup right now with our joint fire with Medina Township and the city of Medina is an example of that. If each entity had to go off on their own and do their own thing, it would probably cost the taxpayers a lot more money. And so I think one of the things that impressed me the most when I moved out to Medina County and started to get to know a lot of the local elected officials is just the highest level and spirit of collaboration that I've seen probably, and again, having worked at ODOT where I've oversaw operations in 8 counties in Ohio, you get to know the locals all over the county, all over the district, and everything. I would say we have probably the strongest collaborative government in Medina County, and it's all being done for the purposes of being fiscally responsible. So yeah, when those opportunities present themselves, I'll if it makes sense to the taxpayers and everything, I'll be supportive of it.
Mm-hmm. Again, speaking with Alan Biehl, a candidate for Montville Township Trustee, and what do you feel if elected is probably the biggest challenge the township faces in this next term?
The biggest challenge, again, I mentioned the growth. I mean, we got a lot going on right now, predominantly along the Route 3 corridor south of town. Now that there's more rooftops, as they like to say down there, the commercial development is now starting to come in behind it. So that's going to present some challenges. But to show you how forward-thinking we are, and Chris Kozman, who's our service director for Montville Township, him and I talk a lot because of my background, his background. We have a lot in common, but we're already thinking about 10 years out and 20 years out. The challenge that the township's going to have isn't today. It's going to be 15, 20 years from now, because all these subdivisions that are coming in are being built today, all within a 5-year period or so, whatever. All that infrastructure is aging at the same time and at the same rate. And so the real challenge is going to be, 15, 20 years from now when all these roads are going to start needing some tender, loving care. The good news is again, with Chris and I, we talk about it, and we're already thinking about, how do we prepare. Really, it's the future trustees. It's not going to be me 20 years from now. I mean, I hope I'm alive 20 years from now. But anyway, we're already thinking about that because, like I said, I think in the now, our challenges are not overcoming. I mean, they're not, mountainous, so to speak. The challenges are going to be in the future and maintaining our assets in the future. And so if there's something we can do today to prepare for that, and that's what I'm working with Chris on, then that's just going to make it that much easier for that next generation of leadership to step in and take over. So
now, if elected for the next term and you serve that term out and look back over the 4 years of that term, how would you deem it a success?
It's funny when I went around to get my petition signed for the Board of Elections to get put on the ballot, and I would knock on the doors like you have to, which as an engineer that does make me uncomfortable for the record, but anyway, I did it because I had to. But I would ask the residents even before they sign my petition, I'm like, how's the township going? Do you have any issues? Because I would actually say to them, I said, if you have issues with the township, I'm not going to ask you to sign this, the petition, because I'm partially responsible for the way this township operates. And so I'm not going to ask for your signature if you're having a problem with the township. The reality of it is everybody that I talked to had the same comment. We have no issues with the township. Everything's running fine. Got a lot of accolades about our police department. I mean, Chief Neal was pleased when I'd come back and report to him, hey, I knocked on 10 more doors and 3 of them said great things about the police department. The reality of it is our trustee meetings are not well attended, and I think they're not well attended in the sense I'm getting they're not well attended is because everything's going well. Mm-hmm. I think it's just human nature. When things aren't going well, then that's when people show up. So I know this is going to sound, to the voters listening to this, is going to sound weird, but a sign of success is nobody showing up at our trustees meetings, because I think that's a sign that things are going well. And I asked that question with everybody I spoke with. When I was going door to door, I'm like, because I'd say, at least go to one meeting a year. It's like, I'm not telling you have to come to every trustees meeting, but it'd be nice just to see what we do, and all that. But yeah, looking back, I think our success is the compliments we get about our police department, the compliments that we get about our park system. I mean, we have a major investment in our township and our parks. So again, we're working to make our roads, again, being smarter in how we maintain our roads with preventive maintenance, work like that to make that better. So yeah, my true ultimate litmus of success is not getting complaints. I mean, it's plain and simple. If we're not getting complaint calls, then that means we're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. And so that would be my measure of success.
Okay. Again, speaking with Alan Biehl, candidate for Montville Township Trustee. And Alan, you've been great in answering all the questions I've had for you here today, but I want to give you the opportunity in case I missed anything or anything you'd like to tell the voters. I'm going to turn the mic over to you and you can talk directly to them.
The only thing I would tell the voters is I know a lot of you don't know who I am because I was appointed. I didn't run for office 2 years ago, so my name may be kind of new to a lot of people. All I would say is, if you support, myself, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, know that with me, you're going to get top-notch professionalism in government. You're going to get fiscal responsibility in government. You're going to get the best ideas that I've learned over my career to help the township, especially, again, assets and road assets. Those are the key things that I think most voters would want to know is that, they've got a government that is running efficiently, a government that is running professionally, fiscally responsible. That's what you'll continue to get, if I get elected to serve another 4 years as a trustee.
Great. That's Alan Biehl, candidate from Montville Township Trustee. I want to thank you for putting your hat in the political arena, and I want to wish you the best of luck this November.
Thank you.
Thank you.